Hi, welcome to my talk about deployable API infrastructure with nGINX. My name is Daniel Kocot and I'm a Senior Solution Architect and Head of API Experience and Operations at CodeCentric in Germany. If you want to get in touch with me, just use the normal stuff like email, Twitter, or LinkedIn, and we can chat about the things you maybe learned or you have questions about regarding this deployable infrastructure thing. What I would like to talk about is this deployable infrastructure based on API descriptions, so that we want to bring some value into this whole type of thing regarding gateways, portals, hubs, and even registry, because we are doing some kind of things based on API descriptions and we want to have them visible, available. So we need this infrastructure components like we see with this gateway, portal, hubs, and registry stuff available to make sure that we have the visibility towards APIs. And thinking about gateways in this case, we covered a whole step about this API mediation type of thing. So with API mediation, we mean this architectural layer to manage, protect, and enrich APIs to make sure that everybody can access them, but we are sure that they are protected in some cases. Then what we want to do with this API mediation layer is to really intercept API traffic to make sure that we know what is happening towards our APIs, maybe that we also know what is happening in the backend. And when we think about API mediation, we might think about the concept of these so-called outer APIs to bring something to the outside world, even if it's still inside the company or the organization where we are actually. So having this outer APIs, it makes it easier for us to understand what is needed to present these outer public APIs to the world actually. And one important thing is to have no real business logic within this layer actually, so that you don't have anything in reference to do things regarding to the API request and generating things or aggregate things or do big transformations apart from this thing, having an XML transformation or a JSON transformation type of thing actually. So there should be no business logic in there. When we look at an API definition or specification, we see that it's quite easy to read and somehow quite easy to handle. So in this case, we have this representation by using stoplight elements to really see what is available apart from the definition. But normally when we look into the deeper ground, we see something like that. We see this quite well scripted OpenAPI definition, which normally is not that short as we have it here actually, to really have an opinion about what is happening behind this interface we want to consume actually. So normally this is a real complex thing, so that we need the things to be visible at first sight actually. And we want to be open to things that we are also able to avoid breaking changes and all the stuff. So this is when we look at an OpenAPI definition. To get more about this OpenAPI type of thing, it's good to have a look at this OpenAPI Map, which comes from the API Handyman, which is just web interface where we are able to understand what OpenAPI really means and what we are actually talking about. So having all the opportunities to write an OpenAPI definition, to really make sure to understand what is really needed on each specific level so far. What about callbacks and all the stuff available. Normally, when we look at APIs, we find things like references, so that we are able to really use or reuse things actually that are always already presented in another API definition, or that so we can reuse them and use them with our own definition so far. So we can use these references in a local style, we can use them with a remote character, or we can even use URLs. So if we have a registry available or a design library, we are able to really implement these URLs and use this path to really obtain what is needed and to do not to repeat things, to do everything just for one time and just reuse it actually. The other most important part of an OpenAPI definition is to use OpenAPI extensions or X objects. So to handle own or so-called vendor needs. In this case, as you might remember, when we go back to the OpenAPI definition, we already saw there an OpenAPI extension. So normally you write something like X minus vendor minus blah, 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 or X minus blah, blah, blah. It is really good to have the opportunity to really extend the definition and put some elements into it that are needed in specific ways, or to describe things in more details, or use things for configuration purposes actually. And they are supported on the root level, on the info level, at the paths, operation parameters, responses, tags, and inside the security schemes. So with this thing within the OpenAPI definition, we are able to add more value to the OpenAPI definition, just not only presenting or representing the endpoints actually that are available. And to have a look at this, we go a little more deeply into this OpenAPI definition we saw earlier. And there we have the paths description, where we have this news path. And there is one of these extension objects. It's in this case called X minus nGINX minus upstream, so that we are able to send upstream informations to the, or present upstream informations of for the nGINX actually. So we have this simple structure of having a get parameter and all the stuff available, but we add some more value to get onto description, to have something like configuration as code, because we want to do things in a more, I would say, automated way actually. We are not interested in doing things every time on our own and repeat every step we do. We want to really automate this type of thing. And with using this OpenAPI extensions, we are able to do so. And what we see now is that we have a YAML file available, and it's normally good to just convert this stuff, saying, okay, this JSON file, to have the opportunity to do things within JSON, because it's normally faster for and easier for machines to read than having this YAML file we saw in parts earlier actually. This is good for humans to be read actually, but when we are thinking about being a machine, it might be good to have just the usage of JSON actually. And what we do actually first is we have to think about, now we have the OpenAPI definition available as a JSON file. It would be good, because we thought about this automation stuff, to have a parsing step actually. So we choose the parser of our choice actually we want to use. It in somehow is depending on the preferred programming language. So if it's JavaScript, Node.js, or whatever you use, or Go or Python, there will be some JSON parser available, which makes it easier to obtain the information from this OpenAPI definition, because it's just a text document we actually have. And this is what it makes us possible to really parse this whole JSON stuff and fetch some informations actually, so that we can fill up variables with the fetch data from the JSON file and make it available, make these variables available. And thinking about this nGINX configuration stuff, we are able to really use a template engine like Handlebars, Mustache, or whatever is available in the programming language to create templates, actually, to write this configuration template in reference to the nGINX configuration, and to make sure that we don't repeat ourselves anymore. So now we have a good done step forward, actually, to really make sure that we can create this nGINX configuration nearly automatically, or done by a machine by having a script or something like that. So it's really easy to put things, when we go back to the OpenAPI definition, thinking about configuration as code, to really configure all the things we do in the OpenAPI definition, to put informations we need actually in reference to plugin behavior, or doing things when we even go further, like rate limiting and all the stuff, all this information that we put into the OpenAPI definition, and make it available for our parser to parse the JSON file and to fetch again the information. So we fetch the data from JSON, everything is needed, and we are really able to create the nGINX configuration because we have templated some configuration file. And having done this makes it quite easy for us to really put everything under automation. So we can put everything in a CI/CD pipeline and do all the steps we develop locally into a CI/CD pipeline. We are able to really automate the steps from having an OpenAPI definition to having a nGINX configuration. And then we are able to really have this speed and quality thing to make sure that everybody who wants to set up an API and use nGINX with the capabilities as a proxy and having the more capabilities as an API gateway, to really make sure that it's really automated and really on high quality, actually, to make sure that we don't have to think about it and don't do stuff we do normally when we do MVPs or POCs, where we do everything manually, so that we really have this automated thing. There's only one downside, actually. So there is no standardization available. So there is no real standard saying, okay, there is a command line tool available or something like this to really have the standard to say, okay, I have an input file and I want to create a specific configuration file out of it. So there's a lot of things that we must do on our own, actually, and really thinking about what we really need to obtain the things like configuration files, to really understand. Maybe we find a Git project or something like, or on GitLab, actually, where somebody already put some effort into it and created a little converter or transformer for this specific case. But there is no real standard for this, saying, okay, I have an OpenAPI definition. It has to look like this to really move into a configuration file to have it there. But in the end, what we do as a real approach in having this deployable infrastructure available with all the information about the API, and have also the API available, is really moving into this, what I call, and what a lot of people on the internet and at conference talk about, is APIOps, actually. So we have this design phase where we create an API definition, put it then under source control, and do several things within the CI/CD pipeline, like the things I mentioned earlier. So creating configuration as code, and deploy actually the configuration as code as the last step, as you see here with a so-called command line interface, so that we are able to deploy the API definition towards a gateway, portal, or whatever we need, or even just to a proxy and say, okay, this is available there, and we put it there. And the good thing about this is we have this nearly end-to-end automation starting in the CI/CD phase and moving to the deployment phase, so that we don't have to think about on the developer or designer side what will happen on the way to the gateway or to the proxy, to really make sure that we here put all the effort into it and really concentrate on designing, in the end, good APIs to make everything available on our side that is needed to provide this good API. So we don't have to think about this type of things like how to lin, test, or policy enforce and all the stuff, and how to deploy things somewhere. So we just can focus on what brings value to the company, and we have done all the rest by just automating this whole end-to-end automation process by providing the fetch data from the OpenAPI definition and transforming this data with a template into a new configuration file, and use this configuration file on the side of the API gateway and the API portal so far. This is what is really needed. And with this, we can deploy the API definition everywhere we want. We can package it in different ways, so we are really able to do so. So we can even go deeper and say, okay, we have the idea of having an API product and having a proxy for every API product we provide to the outside world, so that we can really focus on not talking about this infrastructure anymore, so that we can really rely on what we presented by using references and all the stuff within the OpenAPI definition, to really make sure that we just can put the effort on the OpenAPI definition so far. And this is what it's all about when I talk about such a thing like deployable infrastructure with the concept of nGINX in this case. Yeah, having open source or even enterprise software or components available that we are able to really make them easy to maintain actually, and to bring a really fast value stream to them, and say, okay, it's quite easy to use all the stuff because everything is available. And as mentioned earlier, you have to think about on your own about how to standardize just these things actually, and make sure that this process is available to everyone in the company, and you have to make sure that it is understandable for everyone within your organization or company actually. That was my talks, my ideas, my insights about this deployable infrastructure thing with nGINX actually. If you're interested in reading more about the stuff, you find posts on the blog, on the Cocentric website actually. I have even a blog on my own, hosted on GitHub, and I post time to time on Medium. So if you're interested in reading more about the whole stuff of APIs, just have a look around these sites and you find informations from my side actually. So it's up to me to say thank you to all of you just for listening to the talk, and hope you enjoy the rest of the nGINX sprint. Thank you.